Good morning. Good morning. Thank you very much for joining us this morning for a special Job Train How Talent session, because we're doing it in partnership with our friends at Creed Communications. And I've got Dave Alstow back to join me to explore career sites, ATS, and why they need to play nicely. According to some LinkedIn stats, about 75% of candidates will research a company really thoroughly, even before they apply. And that's why career sites are so important. But all too often, the link or the last mile between career sites and the ATS isn't an altogether good or joined up experience in many ways. So this morning, we're going to give you some really practical advice on how to make sure that your career site does play nicely with your ATS. We've been working with Creed now for many years, perhaps 16 years, and we worked together and collaborated on many career site and ATS projects. And Dave himself has previously worked for an ATS, so he understands that side of things really well. So this morning, we're going to cover the importance of consistency of brand, how to create the best and most seamless journey from your career site to your ATS, the challenge of job adverts versus job descriptions, big difference between the two. We'll explain what it is and how best to deliver the best experience for candidates whilst also giving them all the information they need. And we'll also get a little bit into the importance of tracking candidate activity and ultimately conversions. And when we mean conversions, that's people that say they want to apply and people that do actually apply, and why the two really need to be joined up in terms of sharing information, insight, and all the rest of it. As ever with these sessions, we love questions, so please feel free to ask them. The best way to do it is to stick them in the Ask a Questions bit down here. And as I said before, this is a series of webinars. This is the first of 3, so I hope you'll come back and join us for future ones. So let's get on with the show. I'm going to invite Dave on now, so I'm just going to go and find him. Just give me a second. Okay, here he is. Dave, are you there? Grab a coffee, because as soon as I do, he's bound to join me. And I can see he's there. Right. Dave. Aha.
Hello. I just thought I'd interrupt your coffee drinking there, Giles.
That's all right. It's typical. If I grab a coffee, then guest is likely to join. Yeah, here we are again. You come back for more. Glutton for punishment.
Yeah, glutton for punishment, indeed. Indeed. No, looking forward to it. Well, and I see you're back in the office.
I am. It's nice and quiet here today. I've actually broken out of our little meeting room because I'm probably one of only about 4 people here. We're not coming back yet en masse. We are having team meetings each day of the week here, so people can come together, see one another again. But I think it might be a little while before we're back full scale. And I know you guys live next door to us, and I know you're popping in and out of the office, but it's not a return yet, is it?
No, I may be venturing there once or twice next week, but I don't think there'll be many of us doing that, that's for sure. Yeah, so strange times. But anyway, I'll not digress because we could talk about that for a long time, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. You're not missing out today. The weather up here in Altrincham is pretty miserable. So, yeah, same with you.
It is, I'm looking outside. It's grey and it's raining. Yeah.
Right. So, Dave, this is the first of 3 webinars. You really are a glutton for punishment. Today we're doing career site and ATS and why they need to be friendly and work together. The second one is going to be all about how to buy tech with confidence. I know you've got a lot of experience with ATS. And the final one is referrals. Dead important. We all know about the quality of referrals that give us, the power of them, but how can we best launch a really successful, engaging referral campaign. So we'll come on to that as well. For anybody here this morning, just go to our main page. I'll share a link out in the chat stream now. You can see all of our past and also our future webinars too. So feel free to join, rewatch, and also share with anybody you think might get some value from these sessions. So, Dave, let's crack on.
That's cracking indeed.
Yeah. So career sites and ATS. So you're in the fortunate position of having worked on both sides, both for an ATS and obviously out at Creed Comms, specialist employer brand. So perhaps just tell me a little bit about your experience, both on the ATS side and obviously from Creed's side, and why this particular subject is of particular interest to you and why you've got passion for it.
Yeah, I know when we were talking, weren't we, Giles, about obviously topics that we could cover, and I thought this one was particularly important, having kind of, I guess, been on both sides of the fence, I suppose, as it were, in that I think the thing that I find has been missing in all the years that I've been doing this is the conversation or the dialogue that the ATS have with the agency and have with the client, and at what point they are all getting involved together. Because having been on the ATS side of things before, it's often quite siloed, as in you're working with the client directly. The client gives you their requirements as to what they're looking for, and it may then come later down the track that the ad agency was looking for something quite particular that they wanted implementing during the implementation phase or the testing phase. It wasn't discussed, and then it ends up being a bit of an awkward conversation of, well, that might actually cost you a little bit more money, or that's going to take X amount of time extra to develop it, or that wasn't in the scope. And just inevitably that can be a bit of an awkward conversation between ATS and client, because they're being told one thing by their agency, and now they're being charged a little bit more potentially by their ATS. So that can cause a bit of frustration. Equally, if you're in an ad agency position like we are, obviously our responsibility is primarily in helping clients either build their careers sites or advise them on how best to manage the ones that they already have in place, and having a line in with the ATS to fully understand what are the tracking capabilities or the branding capabilities, etc. Just it makes a massive difference. It's going to save a lot of time and a lot of money.
Yeah, it's probably fair to say that an awful lot of time, energy and cash goes into developing a really good, solid career site. And with that hard work, it's obviously critical that is carried through into the ATS experience. And with that in mind, should we talk about consistency of brand first of all? And we're not going to, you might be disappointed, but we're not going to name and shame here this morning. We're not going to talk about specific clients that we have worked on together, but we're going to sort of illustrate with a few kind of examples. For any of you here that are well versed, either applied for jobs or have a career site, you may have found somewhere the experience from the career site to the ATS elements, that is when you start to either search or apply for jobs, can be quite different. Tell me, Dave, talk to me about, why consistency of a brand is so important, and secondly, how best to achieve that with an ATS.
Yeah, and I'm glad we're looking at this topic this week, Giles, because I know the first time we had our first webinar, when I say way back when, probably about 3 weeks ago, this was a topic that came up,
like 3 years ago,
and it does, and it was something that we thought at the time, God, we could talk a long time about this. And I think, yeah, if I start from more the ad agency side initially, and then I'll probably might ask you something actually, Giles, at the end of this.
Yeah, go for
it. You're right, we spend an awful lot of time. Clients spend an awful lot of money to develop careers websites, whether you're doing those in-house and you've got your in-house marketing teams and web teams building them, or whether you've got an agency like us or the agency you may already have in place building a careers website. It takes a lot of project management. There's an awful lot of content to be gathered. Do you want video? Do you want photography? Do you want, what's your tone of voice? How are you going to get your employer brand? There's tons of stuff. And there's nothing worse than doing all that, making all that effort, spending all that money, all that time, for then the one leaving point that they spring out of that career site. So that could be, because we generally advise on a careers website, there should always be the big fat apply for roles button in the top right hand corner for consistency. And many clients, we know that when we look at Google Analytics, candidates will go click and they will just leave the site straight away. We don't always want them to, but if that's what they want to do, then great, that's what that button's there for. Even if there's a disjoin there between how that first site looked and felt and then how it appears once they've clicked apply for jobs, you've immediately kind of damaged that candidate experience, because they're thinking, how is this going to be just something as simple as how is this going to be a joined up application process or career path for me, if even these two quite simple things can't be joined up, when actually it's really, really straightforward. So I think there is do you know what? I'm going to mention a client, Giles, because it's a positive mention, in that Giles and I work on the Yorkshire Building Society account from two very different perspectives. And I think that's a really nice example where a career site's being created with an employer brand in mind, that's then been with early conversations with the job train team about how we can make sure that that branding is consistent as you go through the application process. And that's from a tone, and that's from a visual and a branding standpoint as well. So I don't need to talk too much about that one, but I think if you did ever want to go and have a look, that's a decent example of how it can work. There are plenty of examples, as you've said, Giles, out there where it doesn't work. But I think it's just making sure that if you are talking to candidates and representing yourself in a certain way on your career site, fundamentally, as far as I see it, a candidate, they don't really care where they are, whether they're on your career site, whether they're in your ATS. It's fundamentally the same thing for them. They've gone on to find a job or to find out more information, and whichever of the two platforms they're on, it wants to feel and look the same. Otherwise, you've got a real risk of losing that candidate. What about yourself, Giles? What's your view from the ATS side?
Right. From the ATS side, I think if you are a client, first of all, and you are choosing a new piece of tech or an ATS, or even actually, an employer brand partner as well, make sure that you are joining the dots and linking the two together as early as possible. If you're going through an ATS procurement process, make sure you're having the conversation very early on about how they will, first of all, brand the candidate pages to make sure that they're consistent. Secondly, how much further will they go in ensuring that there's a smooth and consistent candidate experience or transition from the career site to the ATS? What kind of analytics can be shared between the two as well? And have they got previous experience of working in partnership, either with internal marketing teams or with clients' preferred employer branding agency as well? Establish all these things up front, and then you should be well set up. Also, probably worth mentioning here is make sure that or establish whether there's any costs around doing that brand as well. Sometimes there are some costs. Excuse me, printer going in the background. You can tell I'm in the main office here. Somebody will probably come up and grab something in a minute. It shows it's authentic. I will say probably quite a good example. I can see we've got Michelle here from Nobia. She's the head of TA at Nobia. They've got a really good example of a good career site with good transitions as well, not just because they're a client of ours, but the idea is that apart from just the apply now link, if you have different areas of your organization, such as retail, logistics, back office, that kind of thing, then make sure there's clear links so the candidate isn't ever having to click more than twice to get through to the information or the jobs that they need. If your organization, like Nobia, has a number of different brands that sit under it, make sure again that brand experience from career site through to ATS is clear, so that the candidate, when they land on the ATS, is very clear who they're applying to, and that's consistent as well. Is that all right?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We'd echo that at our end as well. Absolutely. And I know there's some certain elements we're going to be covering off as well about that whole kind of job filtering as well a little bit later on.
Yeah, I'll add one other thing. So I'm not going to name the client here, but we are working on quite a large implementation for a big client. And the first thing that we've done, I don't know who sort of won the tender first, whether it's you or us with that particular client, but the first thing we did was pick up the phone to one another and say, right, okay, now we're in a position to confirm that we will be working with this client. How do we work together? And also, what does your critical path look like in terms of when is the creative or the career site going to be established? How best can we work with one another to ensure the best experience for the client? And whether you know the partner or not, you should, as an ATS or as a client, be looking to join the two together as early in the process as possible. And making sure they play nicely as much as the experience plays nice.
And yeah, because you've got to hope that you've got to build a relationship between the agency and ATS as you mutually benefit each other. So there's no point that, even between the likes of a job train and a Creed, it has to work really for the benefit of the client. And that particular client that you're talking about there, Jasmine, to the point, we've had a conversation with your chief technical officer, haven't we, in the last week about how we're going to make some pay-per performance software that we're implementing for that client work as best it can already, even though there's no career site there yet, there's no ATS officially in place yet, but we are preparing for what is coming down the track and how that's going to work with job train. So soon you get these conversations in, the better.
Yeah. And being brutally honest from an ATS perspective here, with the best will in the world, we want to try and achieve the best possible consistent experience from career site to ATS. But there's always technical considerations. Now, these are not things that you viewing this webinar need to be too concerned about. But again, it's important to have those conversations upfront as early as possible to work out the art of the possible and how do we deliver the best possible experience. So these can be things like, to what extent can the ATS adopt the brand, colorways, logos, images, that kind of thing, even down to fonts and what have you, to make sure that's consistent. What are the possibilities around being able to display or take jobs from the ATS and then display them on the career site, whether that be top jobs or latest jobs, or here's a list of roles within, again, logistics, HR, whatever it might be, and then work out what can be done. A degree of pragmatism is always good, but the earlier these conversations start, then the better the outcomes as well. That good? Anything else you might want to add on to that one?
No, not on that. Well, actually, just the last thing was just the daftest thing, which is what the key thing that there's two things that people tend to spot when they're transitioning between a career site and an ATS. One is, does the URL massively change? So that's one, is if you can try and keep the URL relatively similar on both, then it doesn't feel like you're jumping from what might be like I'll make it up, creedcomscareers.co.uk to some ATS dot this slash blah, 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 a million strings down there, because otherwise people can tell really quickly they're in a different place. The other thing is just the header at the top of the page. Can you have a big image that maybe you've had a photo shoot of, or whatever your brand style is, to be able to sit at the top of the different ATS pages, and can that change, and can it vary? And just asking those questions early on, because again, that's going to link it in nicer. Yeah,
totally agreed. And on the basis that most candidates will be landing on the career site and also the ATS using a mobile. If your career site is beautifully mobile optimized and your ATS isn't, then you're going to have a big drop off. You're going to have some frustration. So make sure, establish that your ATS candidate experience is also fully mobile optimized. And that is a constantly moving feast. We've just started conversations here about completely redesigning our candidate experience. Yet again, we only did it 4 years ago. It was made for mobile then, but things move on all the time. Consumer behaviors and experiences, whether it be, I don't know, on Compare the Meerkat or Amazon or what have you, dictate candidate expectations for when they come to apply for a job. So, establish those things as well. Job descriptions versus job adverts, Dave. What's the difference between the two, and how do we cater for both?
Right. I'm going to just say that this is in the most basic sense of the description of what you've just called it, Giles. So one's an advert and one's a description. So, right, where do I draw the distinction? So on a careers website, what you tend not to do is have either necessarily, because you don't normally have specific adverts for specific jobs unless you're pulling them through from the ATS. You're more likely to have this is our retail area, or this is our head office, or whatever it might be, and you have a description of that part of the business, what to expect and the types of roles within it, etc. There are some instances where for certain clients of ours, they recruit an awful lot of contact center roles, so they do have a contact center ad on the career site because of the volume. But generally speaking, you save those for the ATS. But I think the key thing here is, so taking almost career sites out of the mix, is that you will, or you should have, I'm quite fierce about this, you will have job adverts, or you should have job adverts on job boards or on Indeed or Paper Performance, wherever you're advertising your jobs. Now, they shouldn't obviously be job descriptions. They're fundamentally an advert. They're trying to attract someone to the role, to you as a organization, to your employer brand, and the benefits that you can offer, whatever they may be. That is the fundamental what you're trying to do. You're trying to hook people in for the right reasons. When they hit the ATS, then I think that's a completely different situation, because I think I know ATSs like JobTrain have the ability to host both an advert and a job description. So you've got the ability to, if you want to see the 3-page Word doc that the hiring manager's written or whatever, and every single bullet point on it, then it's there. But most people, like Giles said, and but Creed are a big advocate of this, is that people are now shopping for jobs in much the way that they're shopping for cars or televisions or whatever it might be. It's not a small purchase, maybe like an Amazon necessarily, but the Amazon purchase process is now what people are looking for in job searching and job application. They want to be able to go on. They want it to be really clear where they need to go. They don't want to click a load of pages. They want to do as little searching as possible. They want to filter down to the right information as quickly as possible. And then when they get to their advert, because we're talking about adverts, Giles, because I can get easily sidetracked, that advert needs to be an ad. You are advertising to that person fundamentally. You are trying to attract the best person for that role to be, to enhance your business. And I think that should very much be an advert that is accompanied by a job description within the ATS rather than it being just sent purely to a job description.
Totally agreed. Other considerations about job adverts as well, twofold here. Firstly, when you are writing a job advert, it's really important that you consider that job advert might also appear on job boards. Candidates need to be able to search via a job board for job adverts and job opportunities. They'll quite often do that using keywords. So job adverts are specifically crafted in order for candidates or prospective candidates to find the right job that's for them, to be engaged by the job advert. But also, especially during this period where candidate volumes are going to increase massively, it's important to be honest about the opportunity. And there should be an opportunity for candidates to almost self-select or deselect using that job advert. It should have a consistent tone of voice. And that's where you guys will typically come in to make sure that in terms of the employer brand, the kind of message or feeling you want to convey about the organization is consistent. And again, your job adverts that have been beautifully crafted by yourselves or a marketing team need to be replicated on the ATS. There shouldn't be deviation from that. It should be consistent. There shouldn't be a suddenly sort of change of tone of voice or something like that. Job descriptions have an awful lot of value. Job adverts should not be too long. But job descriptions are then necessary for me as an applicant or prospective applicant to be able to dig into the detail of exactly what the job entails, what's expected of me, what I should expect of the organization, that kind of thing. The other thing that I will say is in terms of adverts, again, it is an advertisement. Today, they should include media-rich elements. And by that, I mean they should include, wherever possible, either an image or even better than that, a video. If you're shopping on Amazon or any other type of thing, then if you won't buy anything without you being able to see what it is you're buying or get some visual element of it. And the simple fact is that images and video convey so much more information to prospective candidate than text will alone. We live in an age of visual media, of Instagram, of Facebook, of YouTube, of everything else, Snapchat. So if you can include videos and images, ideally, great if you've got a partner you can work with, like Creed. If not, then don't be afraid to create some images or some simple videos yourself. It might be a hiring manager talking about the job opportunity or head of department or whatever it might be, but do experiment, have that. But again, if you've got or you have invested time, energy, money in creating imagery, videos, then make sure that your ATS can support that. And therefore, it's a consistent experience for candidates from career site through to ATS and job adverts.
Agreed, and wholeheartedly. And video could be another conversation I could certainly ramble on about for another half an hour. But I think I read some crazy stat recently that something like 90% of the data consumed online is video. Now, it kind of makes sense, I suppose, in how big the files are. But even so, for 90% of all online data being used being video, why shouldn't that be in jobs and job adverts? So we're big advocates of video, especially if you can get them in your job ads, and it always looks a lot better even on your job boards if you've got them on there. But I think, like Giles, as you just said there, really key as well, and it's a good point actually, is making sure that whatever you're putting on your ATS as your job advert is, because I'm guessing in most of your cases, if your client's listing or you're working at an organization, that your ads are being scraped onto the likes of Indeed and places like that. So if you're just posting job descriptions, you don't really have a choice in posting it as an advert because it's just scraping through the job description anyway. And that job description point, Giles, again, absolutely right. Job descriptions are key, because what you can't do is just apply on the basis of an advert. The advert should get you excited and want you to read more, but your job description should also be on brand. That should still be weaving in your brand, your employer brand essence, your people promises, all these kind of core, your core propositions. Why should I come and work there, and what's the what's the truth, what's the reality.
What's the deal?
Yeah, that's it. So yeah, so really important.
Good. So we've got that one sorted. So clear journey through from career site through to ATS, consistent branding, look and feel, consistency in terms of job adverts, but also make job descriptions available if you can, give as much information to the candidate as possible. It doesn't stop there. So sometimes where I've seen it falls down is, again, you created a brand, you created a tone of voice, and then as soon as you get through to the comms that are then generated from an ATS, be it a simple acknowledgement email or invite to interview or rejection or offers, that kind of stuff. Again, there needs to be consistency there, doesn't there?
There does. And this takes me back to my ATS days, Giles, which doesn't seem that far away when you talk about it like that, in the sense that I remember the joys of creating templates that had all the dear candidate name and all those sub brackets and all that kind of stuff in it. But really important there, when we got a tone of voice guide from an agency as to what the way that those should be written, or even better, if the agency wrote them for us, so that we had the exact kind of the right tone and the right messaging that we wanted to get out to candidates, all the better. There was nothing worse than us kind of having to write them for ourselves, having no real understanding of how they wanted to sound or how they wanted a candidate to feel. So all the comms in it. So any comms that are going out, but also I think this extends further as well, Giles, and again, as an almost another conversation. But when we're talking about employer brands with businesses and consistency of proposition and message, is that inevitably these candidates are going to be getting contacted by hiring managers or recruiters or whoever it might be that's at the various stages of the project, and they need to be talking same lingo, coming out with the same messages. There needs to be consistency there, be it technical through the ATS or be it in person through voice or video or whatever it might be.
Yeah, and let's face it, that's probably happening a lot more now. There's going to be off-platform or off-ATS conversations taking place, whether that be video. Obviously, we're all using that now. We're here, we're doing it. But that might now be text messages, WhatsApps, that kind of thing. There's going to be a lot of off-platform conversations. So providing a consistent toolkit, maybe one that's available within the ATS, or at least some basic guidelines that people can adhere to, and then gives them confidence to communicate with candidates and making sure they're doing it in the right way and in a positive way.
Absolutely.
Great. Final bit. It doesn't stop there. Again, lots of time, effort, money is invested in attracting candidates even before they hit the career site, be that using job boards or different paid search or paid campaigns. And sometimes there can be a disconnect in terms of where candidates have come from, where they originated, so we can actually attribute some value to a specific source, whether that be how are we measuring it, whether you're measuring it through volumes of applications or quality in terms of how many people got invited to an interview or hired or that kind of thing. But that information, that data needs to flow from the adverts or the the job boards, through the career site, and also through into the ATS. It's important, especially for people like Creed or even a marketing team or anybody that wants to actually get some actionable insights and data, that you understand how many people, first of all, click to apply, how many people then complete an application, and ultimately then how many people were subsequently interviewed, offered, and hired. And there needs to be a consistent flow right the way through.
Passionate subject for me, Giles. Something I've
we might go over a little bit here, but hopefully it's all right to stay. We'll go on. Just go for it.
I'll try and be quick. Think if I've been doing this for 12 years, I reckon within the first year of being at my first agency and doing what I did there was, and I think I can talk quite openly, I worked with Sky, and they were a great test bed for me to be able to put a lot of this kind of stuff into practice. They were really willing to want to track things through to hire. And I think we're talking back in 2000, after we got that sort, maybe 2010, 2011, that client was able to track all its job board postings through to hire, which at the time was relatively revolutionary. It wasn't actually as complicated as you think, but now, you roll on nearly 10 years, and I still think, if I even look at my own client base, that the majority of them are not tracking through to, in fact, 80% are not tracking through to hire. And a large proportion aren't tracking through to even application. And the technology is there to do it. And having, like I say, been on the Giles side of the fence before and now back in the agency world, is that it's an easy kind of technological fix, but it has the right conversation being had with the right person at the right time. And is there is the client able to relay that information in the right way to the ATS or back to the agency, or facilitate the conversations? Because that tracking element for me is, you see clients spending, even if it's 10,000 or whether it's in the hundreds of thousands, if not millions, on attraction. I've not met a client yet who says they don't want to know what their cost per application was, cost per hire, where they're getting the hires from, what the cost per hire was per media channel. And doing some awards judging at the moment, and the effectiveness campaign box at the end, which is, how's it done? Can you rate this, that, and it's so important to know actually what you're doing and how it's performing. So it's not complicated. It scares some people, because I've got a guy who works with me, and he's kind of our head of all the tracking and reporting stuff. And he gets so excited about it, but he can often talk in quite technical terms. So we can often be talking about floodlight tags and Google Campaign Manager and this, that, and the other. And when you know it, it all makes perfect sense. When you don't, it can sound quite overwhelming and a thing you want to dodge, but it's really straightforward. It adds a ton of value. I've not come across an ATS yet that can't support it. It's just where you are in the queue typically. And I think that's something where Giles, I think, can sometimes ask for a bit of client support on how that can be pushed depending on where the blockage is.
Yeah, again, it comes back down to partnership, and I would urge you that if you're going through a procurement process, either for an employer brand or advertising partner or an ATS, establish and ask the question, how will you work with my partner or my marketing team to ensure that reporting flows right the way through and we can track everything? So without getting the nitty-gritty and without getting too technical and stuff, there is tracking code, whether it's things like Google Analytics or Facebook pixels or what have you. There's loads of different ways in which that can be tracked. It's important to establish, first of all, that your two partners or your two departments, your department and your tech provider, will work together to make sure that tracking is in place. I can say absolutely clearly from an ATS perspective, your ATS should support being able to include tracking code throughout the candidate application process so that you can report on that. The ATS should be willing to work with both the client and also any partners to share that information back, so then we can review it and make sure we can improve it. If there's massive drop off in the application experience because the application form's too long, we need to understand that and then finesse it, refine it, improve it, whatever it might be. And finally, that data should be captured by the ATS so that you can also understand not just who applied from where and whether they completed an application form, but ultimately, who was hired and from when, even down to what campaign. And in a practical sense, we had, it wasn't me because I haven't got the technical knowledge, but we had a conversation last week for a new client on exactly how we were going to achieve that for specific campaigns that you were running. It's not complicated to add tracking code in for an ATS. For example, we do it without any charge to the client. Your ATS should support it and should be working with your partners on it.
And like you said, Giles, I mean, it's difficult for me in a way because I appreciate I'm not at an ATS anymore, but having been at one, and obviously with what you've just said, I genuinely don't believe that there should be a charge for the implementation of that code because the agency provide it. It's a line of code. And in the worst case scenario, it needs copying and pasting into one of the pages, which is the thank you for applying. Worst case, it's on a few more of the stages in the application process, but it is, for lack of a better phrase, copy and paste work. There is a bit more to it in testing, but it's not a big piece of work. So like Giles said, that shouldn't be an awkward conversation really, and ATS shouldn't be charging for that because that adds value to what they're providing as well, in my view. Absolutely.
So in summary, it's about a joined up thinking, it's about a joined up approach, it's about communication, it's about establishing how far and how capable your ATS is of supporting your brand, supporting your reporting, the candidate journey, all those types of things. So establish all these things up front, connect your partners, connect your departments, get them talking, and that should give you hopefully a really successful outcome. If you've got any questions at all following this session, then feel free to email me, giles@jobtrain.co.uk, or Dave at
creedcoms.co.uk.
There we go. Brilliant. Dave, thank you.
No, thank you for having me again.
This is the first of 3 sessions.
Yeah.
So you and I got a little break from one another next week. Next week, I've got Mo Brown back on again for a second session, talking about the importance of creating talent tribes and communities, how it's really important to build for the future. Looking beyond the noise and looking to the long term in terms of building a talent strategy. And then, Dave, you're back on the 12th of August to talk about referrals. And then again on the 19th of August to talk about 5 steps to buying the right tech. So come and join us. Spread the word. If you know anybody you think might get value from this session, then please, spread it. Come and join us. It's open to everybody. Have a great week. Dave, thank you again. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
See you later,
Cheers,
guys.
everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening.